Welcome to Try Hard, a love letter to everyone who dares to show up fully in a world that tells you to tone it down. It's about reclaiming the joy, courage, and vulnerability of putting your whole heart into what you do, because your dreams are worth every ounce of effort. Through personal stories and interviews, we'll explore the messy, beautiful journey of chasing dreams, taking risks, and embracing the bravery of being seen trying. This is for anyone who's ever been told they're trying too hard and realized that's exactly the point. So to my fellow tryhards, welcome home. It's good to be seen trying. Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of Try Hard. This feels like a surreal moment because honestly, I have been thinking about this concept for almost a year at this point. I vividly remember standing in the kitchen talking to my mom about it because this phrase try hard was just something that was like gnawing away at me. I will come back to it shortly, but I don't know. I just was like, I'm intrigued to work towards rebranding, or rebranding is so on brand for my line of work, but just sort of like changing the narrative around the concept of being a tryhard. And so I remember telling my mom this in her kitchen last summer. And for some reason, I am normally pretty quick to hop on a new idea. I'm like, oh, I'll give that a try. Like, great, done, check, on to the next thing. But for some reason, try hard and whatever it was going to become felt like this really precious entity that I wanted to hold super, super, super close to my chest. And I thought about releasing something in January, and then potentially again, I was like, okay, maybe more March, like that'll be the right time. And then I ended up taking, a pretty big solo trip, so it didn't end up being the right time. And now this is the first time where I sort of feel a sense of clarity in regards to what I want this to be, but also a sense of, Maddie, you need to take your own advice and try. And know that when you try something new, there's a level of discomfort. It's not going to be perfect. And as you exercise the muscle and do it more and more, it becomes more and more comfortable and you become more and more confident. So this is episode 1. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous, but we're gonna roll with that. Like I said, I've had this idea for a bit. It's been living rent-free in my brain for nearly a year because I just couldn't shake this idea of, what if we stopped apologizing for effort? And the reason I was drawn to the phrase try hard is because I vividly remember being in middle school, getting my grade back on a test, flipping it over and seeing that I got a good grade. And I remember having this feeling of like, wow, like I worked really hard, I put in a ton of effort and it paid off. Only to have some annoying middle school boy. I feel like if you're listening, there's a chance you relate to this experience. Kind of look over, see the grade, and call me a tryhard. And in that moment, I was sort of like, ooh, is it bad to try? Like, is there something wrong with putting effort towards something you want or something you want to achieve? And is that something that I should keep to myself? I think it was a more formative experience than I realized, because from then on, I sort of felt this feeling of I can try, but it has to be in private. Or I have to make it look effortless and easy. And I can't be too eager or too intense or too much. And I'll be honest, that is about the exact opposite of my personality. I have always been a tryhard, whether it's in school growing up, auditioning when I eventually moved to New York and tried to, pursue performing, in my relationships, in work, and now my business. Like, that's who I am. And because of that experience in middle school, I feel like for the longest time, I always sort of thought to myself, like, I'm too eager, I'm too intense, I'm too much. The list goes on and on. And over the last year, I've really started to question and ask myself, why is trying a bad thing? Like, isn't that honestly how anything worthwhile happens? Through effort and trying? So because that conversation and idea was sparked a year ago, it sort of sent me down this adventure where I've spent the last 9 months sort of flipping the script, leaning in, showing up, trying new things, even when it feels awkward or vulnerable, and, taking risks when there's absolutely no guarantee. And I gotta say that trying and being seen trying has resulted in, hands down, the best year of my life, all things considered. And because of this kind of chain of events, I'm really intrigued and excited by the concept of trying and being a tryhard, because I truly believe to my core that some of the best opportunities and things happen in your life when you are willing to try and say, why not? So my whole goal with Try Hard is I want to not only share personal stories, have guests, but I also want to talk from time to time and when it's appropriate about science. And me being interested in the concept of trying, and then also owning my try hard nature, sent me down a little rabbit hole of researching what actually happens scientifically when we try. And this stuff is so interesting and cool to me. So there is a great quote in an article. I will link the article in the show notes or the description below, from Dr. Christine Celio. She's a licensed psychologist. And she says, our brain gets bigger when we try new things. And when brains are growing by creating new neural pathways, they are less likely to experience the cognitive decline that can happen as we age. We adapt to new things and it makes us stronger. If we think of the brain as a muscle, we need to work it out in the same way we do our bodies. So trying new things is essentially a great way to give our brains that exercise. So what's interesting is I think I felt that shift subconsciously. When I first moved to Boston, I started a series called Boston by Myself. And basically, I didn't want to wait for friends or other people to start doing things here in the city. I sort of was like, I gotta get out and explore no matter what. And hopefully by putting myself into these situations and exploring these things by myself, I will inherently make new friends and meet new people. And one of the things I did within that series or journey was go to a Maggie Rogers concert by myself. And I've done like a fair share of solo things prior, but there was something about a concert that felt really, really scary. I don't know. I was like, oh, this feels very uncomfortable. And what's interesting is now, fast forward probably 8 months later, I almost don't even think twice about doing something alone or trying something new by myself. And I think it's exactly what she's describing here. So trying isn't just good for your goals. It's also good for your brain, your mood, and even as she describes here, your longevity, which I think is kind of interesting. So my goal with this initial intro episode is to talk about trying, talk about being a tryhard, and sort of explain the goals for this podcast. For the first time in my life, I'm letting myself explore without really hardcore set expectations. And it's freeing and it's also terrifying. But my goal for Try Hard is for it to be sort of more than just like a podcast, or if you're watching this on YouTube, like a YouTube series. I really want it to be a place where we normalize, caring deeply, putting yourself out there, risking failure, and kind of showing up before you feel ready, i.e. me right now. So you're going to hear stories from me and from hopefully some really incredible guests about the beauty and mess of effort, of starting before you're perfect, and of going for it when people might even be thinking like, who do they think they are? I'm really excited about the potential. I have some ideas of people and stories that I want to have here, but as always, I feel like with anything I create online, I love for it to be sort of a conversation. And so if there are angles you think would be interesting or guests that you absolutely think I should have on, my DMs are always open, and I love to hear all of those ideas. The last part of this initial episode, and I feel like once I finish this episode, I'm going to feel like this huge weight lifted off of my shoulder of like, I got one out there. I'm trying it. I'm giving it a go. But I'm a really big fan of let's talk about something, but then let's also provide some tangible takeaways that you can actually put into practice. And so after trying a myriad, I think that's the right word. Like, do not sign me up for a spelling bee. Yes, a myriad, a countless or extremely great number. Okay, after trying a myriad of new things over the last 9 months, whether it's, reconnecting with an old hobby, trying a new hobby, taking a solo trip, going and trying new things in a brand new city, I feel like I have 3 pieces of advice that I want to share with you today for trying something new. And they might feel a little simple, but I think sometimes the simpler the better, because more often than not, we just kind of need the reminder. So number 1, you've got to start small. I fear that I led everyone astray by sharing my solo month-long trip to Paris on social media, because I got a few DMs from people who were like, oh my gosh, I could never take like a month-long solo trip to a different country. Like, that seems so scary. And respectfully, my response is, yeah, neither could I. Like, I had to do so many smaller things prior to that experience, and even that experience was uncomfortable. So I think it's really easy to see these like grand, big things that people are doing when it comes to like trying new things, specifically on the internet, and feel as though you also have to do that. But it's important to remember that you've got to start somewhere that feels good to you. Because if you are absolutely miserable, you are not going to want to ever do it again. So you got to start small. Say you want to try doing things on your own. I'd say put a time in your calendar every single week for an hour to go on a solo date. And a solo date doesn't mean dinner in the evening when the bar is super crowded. Like, a solo date could be a walk around your neighborhood, grabbing a coffee and sitting in the park, going to the library and reading, sitting in a cafe, and instead of taking your coffee or drink to go, you're actually going to enjoy it in the cafe while you read a book. Starting small allows you to build momentum and kind of grow into those more challenging or scary, kind of bigger things you eventually want to try. The second thing, which is sort of similar to starting small, is that you've got to give it time to adjust. The beginning stage is always awkward, and growth is so incredibly uncomfortable. I am not going to lie right now. This is take 2 of this podcast episode because I started and I panicked. I was just like, who am I to be doing this? Who am I to be sharing? I'll be honest, I still feel a little bit that way, but I'm embracing it and knowing that growth is uncomfortable and good things come from those moments of discomfort. So you've got to allow yourself time to adjust, and specifically also let your nervous system relax. Going back to my trip, the first few days I was there, I'm going to sound chronically online, but you know that sound that's like, and in that moment she knew she fucked up. That was me. I remember sitting in my Airbnb. Granted, it was also very gray and raining out, but I remember thinking to myself, this is going to be the longest month of my life. What have I done? I am on the other side of the world with no one. What am I doing? And thankfully, I have a weekly call with a very dear friend. We've been doing it for a year and a half, I think, at this point. We call it our weekly touch grass because it is just a connector to kind of come back together. Thankfully, we had that call on a Monday, so 2 days after I got there. And initially she was kind of hey, if you want to move it, no big deal. We can totally push the meeting. And I think I knew in that moment I needed that check-in to just center myself, talk through everything I was feeling, and sort of let my nervous system relax with someone I knew and was comfortable with. But prior to that call, and I don't even think it was until midway through that first week, I absolutely thought I made a mistake. I was so uncomfortable. I was so scared. I felt so like the list goes on and on. I was just like, wow, this is wild. Like, what am I doing? And all I needed to do was give it time to adjust, because fast forward to the end of the trip and I was like, this is the best experience I've ever had in my life. How do I do this again? Okay, my final piece of advice for trying something new is to lose the expectations. This is probably my Achilles heel, but you've really got to let go of how it's supposed to look and focus on the doing and not the outcome. I think also when you lose the expectations and you focus on the doing and that specific moment and not necessarily the final result or the success at the end of the road, you're also more comfortable being seen trying, because you are just in the present moment, locked in, enjoying yourself. Because I think there's something fun with trying something new, reconnecting with old hobbies, like almost exploring things with that childlike wonder that we once had. So my goal with every episode is to end with a try hard challenge. So this is something for you to do over the next week or so that has to do with kind of the topic of the episode. That I also want to know about. So as you try this, be sure to tag me on Instagram at Madi Boumet, or you can tag Try Hard Pod. So your Try Hard challenge for this episode is to do one new thing. Try something new and be okay and even proud to be seen trying. This could be trying a new workout class, trying a new recipe, just something that makes your heart beat a little faster, where there's like a little bit of that discomfort, but it's at the end of the day, really not that serious. It can totally be small, but I do want you to tag and share your adventures with me, because if there's one thing I love doing, it is cheering you on along the way. So that concludes episode 1. This is a little bit of a shorter, kind of to the point episode as I get my feet wet. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review it, and make sure you are subscribed on your platform of choice, or if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe below. You can check out the show notes for anything I may have mentioned, and then be sure to follow me on Instagram, TikTok, all of the things at Madi Boumet or Try Hard Pod. And I will talk to you next time. I'm probably going to leave this in, even if you are just listening to the episode, but if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to get like a special surprise here. We just wrapped up, we being me, myself, and I, episode 1, and I realized my vision board was behind me the entire time I was recording. And if you look at my vision board, I have Try Hard written on it. So we are checking things off, and that feels freaking cool. Okay, I'm actually going to end the episode here now.